Hurricane season 2017 getting very active for late June. I'm Mike Naso from the Tropical Video Update page here on YouTube with the latest on our new tropical storm Bret, as well as a second developing tropical storm out there in the Atlantic. Let's get right to it. Here's the systems of concern that we've been dealing with. First of all, we have Tropical Storm Bret closing in on Venezuela and the island of Trinidad, and that is very, very far south, and especially out in this area for this time of year, it could be, we're not positive, but it could potentially be a sign that this is going to be a very busy hurricane season. We also have another tropical storm starting to develop. It's not a tropical storm yet, but it's right on the precipice of becoming one, and we do have tropical storm advisories out. I will read off some of the warnings real quickly just to get everybody zeroed in on what we're dealing with here. We have a tropical storm warning with Bret for Trinidad, Tobago, Grenada, and Venezuela, and a tropical storm watch for the ABC Islands of Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao, north of South America. And we also have a tropical storm warning from intercoastal city Louisiana to the mouth of the Pearl River in the United States with this system, as well as a tropical storm watch from intercoastal city all the way back over to High Island, Texas. So watches and warnings out for two different systems, a lot going on to talk about. Let's get right to it. Now here's the latest on Bret. As of 5 p.m. it was at 9.4 north. You're not going to hear that very often. And 59.8 west. Winds were 40 miles per hour, mostly to the north of the circulation center, which we could barely find. The Air Force was flying around out there and finally was able to find a circulation. It is moving quickly, and I mean moving quickly, west-northwest at 30 miles per hour, which means that literally it's going to be coming ashore here just in a couple of hours. And that pressure was still very high, around 1,000 millibars, give or take a few, as it almost looked like a tropical wave on the satellite imagery. It was not too impressive, and it started to look a little better organized, and we wondered, is it going to become a tropical storm in time? And it indeed has. Here's the infrared satellite imagery, and you can see it started to look almost like an open wave there, but then right at the end it starts to get a little more organized near the center, zeroing right in on the island of Tobago and Trinidad. And you can see Trinidad, here's the big island, and these are very remote natural wonders of the world. I mean, you're talking huge waterfalls, green anacondas. I mean, this is an entirely different part of the world from intercoastal city Louisiana. Just the fact that we have this much activity this early is quite remarkable. You can see the very fast motion, though, and the first bands of the tropical storm are going through the Windward Islands now, and that's going to continue very quickly. Now, the good news is Bret probably doesn't have a long lifespan because the upper-level conditions are going to get very unfavorable, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Obviously, as I mentioned, the tropical storm watches and warnings out. Again, just like with Hurricane Matthew at the end of last hurricane season, very far south. It's quite remarkable. These areas don't think that they're going to get impacted by tropical cyclones, but they can be, and if they're not as accustomed to them as we are here in the Gulf Coast or on the East Coast or in other areas of the Caribbean, it could come as kind of a shock to them, so they should be prepared for gusty winds and heavy rainfall. You can see the computer models continue Bret generally west-northwest, but then more west as it dissipates and gets caught up in the low-level flow, which will keep it moving straight towards Central America and perhaps the Yucatan. Some of the computer models indicate that whatever's left of Bret could make it in the Bay of Campeche in the western Gulf in about 7 to 10 days, although at the rate it's moving it would be a lot sooner than that. However, there probably won't be much of it left, but that does not mean impacts won't occur in the next 24 to 36 hours over areas of Venezuela and the northern coast of South America. So be prepared for heavy rainfall. Again, the best news is how fast it's moving, because that means it's going to be a pretty short-lived affair for these impacted areas. Now, this is potential Tropical Cyclone 3, and what the Hurricane Center is doing this year is kind of a new thing. They're issuing advisories on systems that are not quite tropical cyclones yet, but are just on the edge and very likely to become one. So this will very likely become a tropical storm within the next, say, 6 to 12 hours, and if and when it does, it will be named Cindy. Now, we expect this storm will move gradually northward towards the North Gulf Coast, but there is some divergence in the models. You have some of the models, especially the European, getting pretty obsessed with taking it towards Texas or maybe extreme western Louisiana, other models zeroing in on southeastern Louisiana. So right now it's kind of thinking somewhere northwestward towards the North Gulf Coast. However, that's kind of irrelevant, and I'll show you why. You can see the circulation, or what's trying to be a circulation developing in here, is way on the western edge of all of this deep thunderstorm activity. It's a very lopsided system because of this wind shear, which you can see shooting in here. And because of that, not only is it not expected to strengthen, at least not significantly, but it's going to remain to where all of the impacts are going to be to the north and east of the center. So if this begins to make landfall in a couple of days near Morgan City, Louisiana, you could have heavy, heavy rain in areas of Biloxi, maybe areas of Destin. It doesn't mean that this is going to be a very tightly coiled system, and that's why it's kind of deceiving to look at where the exact center may develop and track. You're going to have weather far away from that, especially with a large and disorganized system. Now, as I mentioned before, you can see the no gaps taking it right into South Texas, but most of the model guidance is pretty good at Louisiana, somewhere in this general region, a general northern, northwestern movement over the next couple of days, and then eventually getting swept on off towards the right. But again, the rainfall is so lopsided that this could be bad for the Florida Panhandle if it comes ashore in areas of southeastern Louisiana. And by bad, I mean heavy rainfall and gusty winds and high surf. Certainly bad beach weather if you're heading to the Gulf Coast. Sorry, it's not going to look good the next couple of days. No sunny skies. That's the unfortunate thing for late June tropical cyclones. You can see there's no problem with the sea surface temperatures. They're plenty warm for both Bret and our developing system in the Gulf. However, it's the upper level conditions that matter the most. Now, Bret has found a little safe harbor down here, but it's going to run into one of the continents, so that's a problem for it. And our other developing system is trying to get going, but there is that strong wind shear. You can see this band of very, very heavy wind shear on off towards the west associated with an upper level low, and that's also going to play a little bit of a factor into the track of our system in the Gulf over the next couple of days. If it winds up, say, retrograding more to the west, then this system might kind of get pushed into southeastern Louisiana. If the center develops and the upper level low stays strong, it could be even more sheared than it would be if the upper level low goes away. When you're dealing with early season systems like this and broad, diffuse centers, it's very difficult to predict any kind of track. And again, like I said, impacts could be far away from the center. I'm not very impressed with it at all right now, certainly not on this water vapor image. I am impressed with the stream of moisture heading on up towards Florida. They've gotten a lot of rain lately. And again, just a very sheared system. Look at this flat western side here. That is not what you want to see for a developing tropical cyclone. So this one's going to take a little while longer. And we're going to watch it, though, because obviously we do have those tropical storm warnings because the winds are going to be approaching and the heavy rainfall as this system develops. And it probably will develop. So the main impacts right now are heavy rainfall and gusty winds for the Gulf Coast in the next couple of days. Watch it. It's not a storm yet, but it does appear to be getting a little better organized there. However, this wind shear should keep it from becoming a hurricane, at least, before landfall. On the contrary, we have a much better organized tropical storm, Bret, strengthening as it heads towards the island of Trinidad, the southern windwards, Tobago, even the ABC Islands north of South America. However, it's about to run into land. It is moving very quickly, so hopefully that keeps rainfall at a minimum, and we shouldn't see any significant strengthening of it. And eventually, Bret is forecast to dissipate in the central Caribbean, although we'll have to watch it because it could always regenerate down the road, although the chances of that look pretty slim based on some of the models. So a lot to cover here as hurricane season 2017 continues, and we'll see what happens. We'll watch the system in the Gulf. We'll be back with frequent updates. I'm Mike Naso. I'll see you next time.